I recently moved into a new place and I want to have a couple of outdoor lounge chairs on my front porch. I saw some lounge chairs with a pull-out footrest on Instagram and decided to make my own version of them. Before my chairs were even finished, they went viral on TikTok with almost 500,000 views, and I already have several people who want to order some of these, so they seem to be selling pretty good as well. So here is all the material we need to build 2 chairs with a footrest. So first off, we have roughly 8 meters of 73 by 73 millimeters or 3 by 3 inches. Then we have around 20 meters of decking boards. So these are 12 centimeters by 2.8 centimeters. And finally we have around 12 meters of 73 by 36 millimeters or 1.5 by 3 inch boards. Now in this video I'm going to show you everything you need to know to build these chairs, but if you'd like to get some woodworking plans, I have some available both in metric and in imperial. So if you want to get these, I'll put some links in the description. Okay, so I started by cutting the legs and I used the 73 by 73 millimeter material. The legs have a 6-degree cut on one end, and since the final length is going to be 50 centimeters, I started by cutting them at 51 centimeters with a 6-degree cut. There are 8 legs in total for 2 chairs. The other end of the legs are going to have a 42-degree cut, making a trapezoid shape. Again, there is 50 centimeters from tip to tip. I made the mistake of cutting them at 48 degrees, which turned out completely wrong of course, and I had to make the legs all over again, so make sure you cut them at 42 degrees. I like to set up a stop block when I'm cutting several identical parts. In this case, it doesn't really matter if the legs are 50.1 centimeters or 49.8 centimeters, as long as they are identical. Using a stop block makes it a lot quicker to get identical cuts. Here's what the legs should look like: 6 degrees on one end and 42 degrees on the other end, with the angles meeting each other. Now I moved on to the armrest, and once again I'm using the 73 by 73 millimeter material. The armrests are 70 centimeters long with a 42-degree cut on both ends, with the angles meeting each other. So again, making a trapezoid shape. For 2 chairs we're going to need a total of 4 armrests. Before I assembled the legs, I made some wooden plugs with a plug cutter. I like to use these to cover up some of the most visible screws, and the benefit of making the plugs myself instead of buying them is that I get to use pressure treated wood, and I can also try to match the grain. So I marked out the location of the screws and drilled holes for the plugs using this incredibly dull drill bit. I drilled some pilot holes and used 2 120mm exterior screws to attach the legs to the armrest. Since the back side of the legs are going to be, well, on the back, I didn't bother plugging those holes. I only did it for the front legs. Now I could plug all of the holes using the homemade plugs and some exterior wood glue. And once the legs were done, I moved on to the seats and back. All of these parts are cut from 36 by 73 millimeter material or 1.5 by 3 inch, and there are 4 different parts. So first up, the seat sides. These are 55 centimeters long, have a 4-degree cut on one end and a 10-degree cut on the other, making a trapezoid. In total, I cut 4 of these. Then we have the seat fronts. These are 62 centimeters long and have 2 straight 90-degree cuts. I cut 2 of these. We also need 4 back sideboards. These are 50 centimeters long. They have a 10-degree cut at the bottom and then a 45-degree cut at the top. Now, I forgot to make the 45-degree cut here, so I had to do it later in the build, but you will see that later in the video. And then finally, I cut 8 backboards at 54.8 centimeters with 2 90-degree cuts. Before we move on with the assembly, let's talk a little bit about selling these chairs. So in total, for all the material, screws, nuts and bolts, for 2 chairs, I paid just under $150. I plan on selling these for probably $500 per pair. That would be fairly cheap where I live here in Norway. So maybe I can raise the price a little bit, but we'll see. Material cost and how much you can sell these chairs for will of course vary depending on where you live. So you'll have to look at the material cost and how much time you spend on building these. And then you'll have to test the waters, test the market and see how much people are willing to pay for these. If you're not getting any sales, maybe try lowering the price. If you're getting a ton of sales, obviously you can try and bump up the price a little bit. So far they seem to be pretty popular and I am fairly confident that I'm going to get a few sales of these. And of course if you want to do something extra with them, you can do that as well. You can make like a double chair, so you can turn it into a sofa, just make it twice as long. And you can also maybe have a table. There are some things that you can do to make these more interesting and hopefully earn more per sale and also get more sales. Before assembling the seat and back, I cut off the plugs and sanded all of the legs. I then added a 45-degree chamfer on all of the edges using the router. And after I had my 12th cup of coffee for the day, I could assemble the seat and back. I started by pre-drilling a hole in the back sideboards and attached it to the seat sideboard using some 120mm screws. I then pre-drilled some holes in the front board, and you can get really accurate with this if you want to, but to be perfectly honest, I just eyeballed where these holes should be. I attached the front board to the seat sides, this time using 80mm screws. For the backboards, I drew a line 18mm in, and then just eyeballed where the screws would go. I used 80mm screws, and I also used a 36mm thick board as a distance block between the backboards. Now at this point I am really eager to test these chairs. You can make drawings where the chairs look good, but you don't really know if they're comfortable to sit in until you've actually made them and sat in them. Okay, so normally I would have finished all of the parts by now. Or I would have cut all the parts first, then finished them, and then assembled the chairs. But I'm not going to do that this time because, first of all, I don't have the finish yet. I had to order some new finish and it hasn't arrived yet. But also, I plan on putting some photos of these chairs on Facebook and Instagram and see if I can sell a couple of these. and I want to sell them unfinished. So I'm going to assemble the chairs first, then take some pictures, and then I'm going to disassemble them, finish the parts, and then assemble again. But first, I forgot to cut a 45-degree cut on the top of the sides of the back, so I'm going to do that first. But now I can move on to attaching the seat to the legs. I marked 33 centimeters from the bottom of the leg in the front, and this is where the top of the seat will be. I then marked 26.4 centimeters from the bottom of the back leg. This is where the back will meet the front edge of the leg. Now, your chair is not going to look exactly like this at this point, because I ended up making some changes to both the legs and the seat. I'll explain more in a second. Okay, so this is the first sit test of the chairs, and I am pretty happy, but I'm not 100% happy. So I'm going to make a couple of changes, just going to tweak it a little bit, angle the seat a little bit more, or angle the back a little bit more, raise the legs a little bit. Couple of things I want to change. Now, if you have followed the steps of the video so far, you will get to the optimized version of the chair, not this version, okay? Just want to be clear about that. If you follow all the measurements and all the angles that I have said, and also if you follow the woodworking plans, of course, you will get to the optimized version. But now I'm going to make a couple of tweaks, and I'm going to get back to you with the optimized version of the chair. So here you can see the new version. The legs are a bit taller, the armrest a little bit longer, and the seat is tilted a little bit more. Once again, if you follow what I've said, this is the chair you'll end up with. And now I am adding some support boards that the actual seat boards can sit on. I made these from deck boards that are ripped down to 43mm wide boards. I've got one on each side of the chair, and I attached them using some 50mm screws. I could then cut all of the boards for the seat and also the footrest, since these are all identical. I cut 18 boards at 54.8 centimeters. I'm using deck boards that are 28mm thick and 120mm wide. If you don't have access to deck boards of those exact dimensions, you can probably find something that's at least similar, and then adjust the height of the support boards. When installing these boards, I used a 12mm plywood as a distance block. But if your deck boards are wider or narrower, you can always adjust the gaps accordingly. Now, this is the first real test of the optimized chair, and it feels a lot better. And these are the boards that will hold the footrest. The front one has a little 10 centimeter long strip that stops the footrest from falling off when you are pulling it forward. For the length of these footrest holders, just measure the gaps between the legs. They should be around 62 centimeters, but sometimes the legs can get a little bit twisted. These are 3 centimeters wide, made from deck boards. The back one is installed 5.5 centimeters from the bottom of the leg to the top of the footrest holder. The front one is installed 17 centimeters from the bottom of the leg. Now I went on to build the footrest. The footrest fronts are 9.5 centimeters wide and 60.4 centimeters long. I pre-drilled them and attached them to the footrest sides that are 6.5 centimeters by 70 centimeters. The backboards are 6.5 centimeters by 60.4 centimeters. And now we have the frame for the footrest. Now this one also needs some support boards similar to the chair, and these are 3.7 centimeters wide and 70 centimeters long. I then installed all the boards that I cut earlier, again using a 12mm plywood as a distance block, pre-drilling and using 50mm deck screws. Now the flip down legs. These are 15 centimeters long, 3.4 centimeters wide, and they have a round end. I did this using my bandsaw and a sander, but you could just use the sander. They also need to have a hole for the carriage bolt. If you use the carriage bolt listed in the plans, you will need an 8mm hole. Okay, so I got the 4 legs and I am going to install them. Of course, they are going to be like this when the footrest is in use. But then I want to be able to sort of tuck them away when the footrest is not in use, so that it can fit under the chair. So I'm going to use some of these bolts. They are threaded only like a quarter, maybe a third of the way. So I'm going to put this in like this, and then you can swing the leg around, and so that when you pull out the footrest, I think these will just sort of fall down naturally. Now these are not long enough to go all the way through, and I did that on purpose because I want them to only go through this inner board, so they won't be visible from the side. So I'm going to have to disassemble this part and make a hole, pre-drill, and then we can put the bolts through. Yeah. If you are building these chairs, of course, it is a lot quicker to drill these holes before assembling the footrest. I did it like this because I want to test with the footrest to figure out the right height on the legs. I'm just tightening it all the way up to pull this bolt in. Then I'm going to loosen it until the leg can flip smoothly. Perfect. Now I'm going to do that 3 more times. Now I can attach these again, and we are good to go. Okay, so there was a lot of listing lengths, sizes and dimensions in this video. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. I have now finished the chairs with the Rubio Monocoat hybrid wood protector. I'll put a link for this down in the description if you want to check it out. It offers an extra layer of protection, and of course I think it looks really nice. I'll also link some outdoor seat pillows from Amazon that will fit these chairs. And again, if you want to get the woodworking plans, I'll put a link for that down below. And you can also search for Baloni Woodworking on Etsy. And if you want to see another outdoor furniture build that's probably a little bit easier and that's selling for even more money, you can check out this video.